Well, hi everyone. I think we'll just give one more minute for more folks to jump on.
Awesome. Great. Well, yeah, like Erica said, given that we got a couple folks here and a few more will show up, and we've got an hour today, we can start and welcome folks as they come in. So as I do start all of these meetings, I do want to acknowledge Vital Communities offices and service area are located within the sovereign unceded homeland of the Abenaki Nation and people. Since ancient times, the Abenaki know that they have always been here, are still here, and will always be here. We pay our respects to them and to the wisdom of their elders and their culture. And this is a critically important truth to keep in mind when discussing anything to do with local food systems, food sovereignty, and land access and land use. And I look forward to this network continuing to bring this truth with us in our work in support of those who are working on projects that are tied into all of these elements. And so just a really quick preview of what we're looking to talk about today. We're going to continue with the hub spotlights that we started the other week with the Hartford Hub. So this week we are going to be hearing from Alice and Megan also, if she wants to chime in anything else about the Mount Escutney Community Health Improvement Plan Food Security Work Group. And just to get us kicked off, I'm going to do a quick little round of connection again, like we've been starting all of these meetings with. So if you just want to, I think we mostly know each other now, but you can go ahead and feel free to introduce yourself anyway. And then we had the question, what is something going on in your community? Maybe a trend, positive momentum around a project, a current challenge, et cetera, anything that you would want folks in this network to know about. And so I believe Erica just put some names in an order for sharing. So Andy, if you want to get started.
All right, I'm Andy Jeffrey. I'm from Feed Kearsarge, one of the two hubs on the east side of the river. I have many hats, but today I'm wearing my Kearsarge Neighborhood Partner hat or shirt. And today was delivery day for our Tray It Forward program, where we distributed nearly 400 trays of seedlings to folks with food insecurity. Yeah, that's about a 4-month operation. Leon's very involved in that as well. And yeah, and so that went all very smoothly. And so I'll pass it on to Leon.
Am I next on the list?
No.
I may as well be.
Sure. Actually, I'm next on the list.
Okay, go ahead, Monica.
Okay, thanks. I'm Monica Collins with Feeding the Valley Alliance in Hancock, Rochester, and Granville, Vermont.
Not yet, no. So I have to put it back in the chat.
And one of the challenges we had going on just recently was that we lost our grocery store. And it's the only grocery store for like a 30-ish mile radius. So that presented a problem to anybody who cannot travel outside of the valley. We organized a meeting and there was some really positive momentum towards a food co-op type of situation, just in case somebody did not come forward to purchase that. But somebody did come forward, which is great. And at the same time, kind of sad that we don't get to develop a co-op, because I don't know that there is enough of a population to sustain two similar businesses. So, but there was quite a bit of momentum towards food systems work. So hoping we can channel that into something else. Yeah. Okay. And next is Lisa.
Paging.
Lisa here representing Bradford Food and Forest.
Bonnie, please.
So something recently that came up in our town more broadly is that Monique Priestley, who is our Orange County representative, also runs this space on Main, and she holds a lot of community activities there. And she recently requested people to participate in a farmer's market, which was something that we had potentially thought about doing with Bradford Food and Forest. So it's exciting that someone who has the capacity to do that is doing that. Bradford Food and Forest is incorporated, has been incorporated for a couple of months. And at our last meeting, we elected the board officers. So that's kind of exciting. It just makes it feel a little more official, and will allow us to open bank accounts and finally do things with grant checks when they come in. So that'll be helpful. And we are planning a Fix-It Fair. We had originally tried to do that for June, but for reasons I don't recall at the moment, we're postponing that until September. So that's what's happening in Bradford.
Hi, I'm Alice Stewart. As you all know, my camera does not work, so I'm just a dark rectangle. So my thing I wanted to report on is one of the things that has surfaced in the action plan that our food security work group has been developing, which Megan and I will be talking about in a few minutes. One thing that came up was community meals, because the community meals in our area all went away with COVID. They all ended and they didn't restart. In one case, the restaurant that used to host it is out of business now, like things like that. So the woman, Mary, who was the person who organized the community dinners in Windsor, it comes to some of our food security meetings, and she started talking about this. And then she and Nan, who's my co-chair who works at the food shelf, all of a sudden came up with the brilliant idea of restarting the community meals once a month at the food shelf. They used to be at the Legion. And so they've had two of them now. The first one had 55 people. The second one had almost 40 people. They've got organizations signed up for the next 8 months to do this, and they're thinking about trying to expand beyond just the once a month. So that felt like a really, like a lot of our planning, it just takes forever. And that was just sort of like this thing, it just happened and it worked, and the community responded really well. And so we're all really excited about that.
Thanks. So I'm Leon Milan. Andy has already introduced the Tray It Forward initiative that happened in our area today. And I was at one of the distribution sites. Some of our volunteers literally drove all over the place delivering trays to people far and wide. What's really nice about this initiative, beyond just the fact of thinking of addressing some food insecurity, it goes way beyond that. It's like introducing the love of gardening and the love of food, but also making connections, community connections between people that normally don't know about one another. So, people have to literally drive to places they've never been, visit people, check out their gardens, talk to them about gardening. It's a wonderful opportunity to build a resilient community, and it is fun to be part of that today.
Awesome. So I'm Cam Hoftelin. I work at Vital Communities with Erica. And well, I would love to second Andy and Leon's comments about Tray It Forward, because that's kind of the area that I live in. And I also recently have been working to develop a system for some communication between a lot of regional folks in the farming community in the Kearsarge area, and just find ways to help people stay in touch over the growing season with any questions or resources they want to share. And so that's something I'm excited about. Yeah. Megan?
Megan with Tubers Auto-Cucci Regional Commission. I don't have anything super food specific, but otherwise, a big thing I'm working on right now is in collaboration with GMEDC and several other organizations is bringing a film about refugees to the Upper Valley. And it's like directly, it's about refugees, but indirectly it's about food security, housing, inclusivity, like all of the issues that we face. So if you're in the White River area, June 15th, look for that. Or if you're in the Randolph area, July 18th, keep an eye out for that. And then actually exactly like where I live, the cover mural, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but that's been happening, and it's the artist is Chilean and he's awesome, and it's been going really well. And I'm just happy to be living in White River Junction right now, so.
I'm excited to see that mural actually, and the artist, just as a tie over, is one of the artists on the Climate Farmer Stories project that I think I might have mentioned in a previous meeting, which is exciting. So sorry, Erica Hiller at Vital Communities. And I think for me, something that I've been thinking a lot about this past week has been the deep frost that we had last Wednesday evening. And I've just been watching a lot of the list chats about farmers having lost crops and still assessing the damage and uncertain exactly what that means. And I know that some farmers have some form of crop insurance, but I know that many do not, particularly the smaller diversified vegetable farms. And I've just been really thinking about that. And I've been grateful for those moments when I've seen farmer to farmer collaboration of like just two of the farms I was talking with the other day. You know, one farm was able to give tomatoes and the other farm was able to give peppers, and they lost those respectively, and they were able to help each other out. And but it's just been like a really tough stretch. And I know I know this is not a late frost, but the 90-degree days coupled with, you know, I mean, it was 19 degrees in the vegetable fields at one of the farms I was talking to. That's really cold. And it's just kind of wild. And I've just been thinking a lot about that and thinking about how in the future, we're going to need to support farmers through all, if we want them there for us, we're going to need to kind of collectively figure out ways to support through these, because I think these challenges are going to increase. Berkeley, are you able to unmute? I think we can come back to Berkeley and we'll go to Lionel.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm very excited. Our initiative, the Claremont Growers Collective, is just about to bloom. The bud is swelling, and we have 38 members. We have a tremendous array of producers, restaurants, vendors, markets coming together. And we're gearing up to launch our interactive map and website over the weekend, where we will be displaying our network and then building on that network. So I think one of the things that may differentiate us from other groups in this larger initiative is our focus on commercial enterprises. We definitely want to be helpful to others, but we've started with the premise that we first need to have a functioning local food network. And so, having limited energy, we chose this path. I think ultimately this path will lend itself to thinking about how to extend ourselves further. But we're very focused on promoting the producers that are here today, making sure that everybody knows they're there, getting people to buy their stuff, getting restaurants and processors to become more aware of what's available locally, to try to create a functional food system here. So I am very sensitive to what Erica was talking about. And something that I think many people have forgotten is that when they talk about climate change, it can go in any direction at all. And so it is entirely possible that we will see frost in summer. It is entirely possible because where we're positioned geographically with the melting of the glaciers above us, the way that cold air is moving, it is definitely in the arena of possibility. And so, yes, there's going to be a tremendous attack on our food system. And the question that I'm asking myself the most is how many people are here in this region and how much food are we making? And what's the difference between those two things? So if the trucks stop rolling in from California and South America and everywhere else, what's going to happen? And how can we prepare ourselves for that and minimize suffering to the extent possible? So I keep waiting for us to take that next step to saying, okay, this is happening. And now what are we going to do about it? So I'm very excited about our group. And I know that that's something that is in the back of all of our minds. And I just feel like I'm among friends. So that's good. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen with the Hartford Hub. I see someone on 207 has their hand raised, actually.
Hi, sorry. I wasn't trying to talk. It's just a little bit hard because I'm on my phone.
Do you want to go ahead?
I didn't mean to raise my hand, so oops.
Oh, okay, no problem. I get it.
Sorry. But I'm Berkeley. Oh.
Yeah, I think let's go for Berkeley and then we'll go to Karen.
Yeah.
Except we might have just lost Berkeley on her phone. So Karen, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Well, I'm here actually. Kat and I are like tailgating at our food justice garden right now. We have our open work parties from 4 to 6 on Thursdays. And so we've got that going, and we've got trees and chestnuts and yellow bud hickories to put in the ground. And we also had an excellent work party. I'm going to let Kat share a lot of that this past weekend at the Clifford Park Food Forest that Erica came out to. So we have great updates as far as having good numbers showing, and planted a lot of cover crop seed and did some work in the Abenaki garden and built a hugel. So yeah, that's the update. The season is like upon us, and I'm really inspired by hearing about, from you all about what you're working on. And I think I'm just kind of in the back of my mind, just realizing the great benefit it is just to know the projects that are out there and you all. And I know there's going to be many great outcomes of this web of connection. And also the sensitivity to the crops, but also the maples and oaks. I've actually heard words like huge die-off, and what does it mean when the oak trees aren't, they've lost their leaf buds, and can they recover? And it's going to be interesting. I think we're all learning to see and what populations are going to be impacted. So just holding all that with you all and acknowledging it. So yeah, thank you.
And hi, I'm Kat Buxton, tailgating with Karen here at the Food Justice Garden on Route 14 in Sharon for our work day. And yeah, it's been all about work days for the community and a variety of different projects. And we're really lucky. We always get great turnouts of volunteers, and we work with students as well. So we get students from high schools, and at our work party at Clifford Park, we had 3 Dartmouth students show up, and that was really awesome. Yeah, sharing a lot of the same worries that have been said, so I won't repeat them, except to say that the forest that I live with did experience a big die-off of young beech, oak, and maple leaves. So most of the trees below 20-foot in canopy are all, they all have dead leaves now, but we know they're going to push more out. It'll stress the trees, but we'll see what happens. The other thing I would say that's coming up in our area is that there's a lot of excitement about this network. And as I think I've mentioned before, I'd love to get to a point where we can invite other people from the Hartford Hub to just come listen in. to just see what this is all about. We're really working hard to connect a lot of existing groups that aren't really working together in the way that we have always envisioned, but we'll get there. And so that just might be a way to help us there. But I'll leave it there. And for now, we're the liaisons. Happy to be here.
Do you want to try Berkeley again, or?
Yeah, Berkeley, are you want to give it a go again?
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm just on my phone on a ladder, so don't worry, hands free, of course. But can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Berkeley with the Claremont Growers Collective, and yeah, I heard what Lionel was saying. So we're excited to be launching our website and our interactive map of growers and vendors and restaurants in our region. And I'm also really excited. I attended one of the farmer meetups with the Kearsarge Food Hub. I guess it was just last week. And so I'm really excited about the ability for this network to kind of grow on that, to grow on communication among farmers and among people who are doing this work. So yeah, echoing what a lot of you guys are saying. Glad to be here.
And I think I'm last. Erica Hoffman Case, Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation. One of the big things that has started to kind of gain some traction here, Megan referenced earlier, Megan Asbury from Two Rivers, is there's been a conversation going on for quite some number of years around asylum seekers, refugee resettlement, migrant workers, but it seems like it's beginning to gain some traction in terms of the groups coming together to work on a few things. There's a partnership that Megan's been a part of, bringing those groups together on this film screening of Utica, the Last Refuge. And the film is really about how these new populations have rescued a dying city. It's about Utica, New York, which is not in Vermont, but anyone who's familiar with the region knows that it was a city that was dying. And various refugee communities over a period of a couple of decades brought a lot to the city. And this film kind of captures the journey of some of the more recent residents that have come to that area. That was intriguing to me in terms of trying to look at refugee resettlement as a driver for local stability, local resilience, from a very business-centric perspective, local workforce. We don't have enough people, and that's at all levels of the workforce. Here in White River Junction, we've lost a couple of restaurants recently, and that's manpower related. And so it all ties into kind of a sort of an end user, if you will, in terms of food networks that we are establishing here in the state. And so the fact that there's this film series that's coming together. I'm working with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. They are a part of the Working Communities Challenge program that's operating here in the state of Vermont. There are 8 Boston Fed funded projects under this Working Communities Challenge. White River Valley Consortium is another one here in our region. And in Brattleboro, they pivoted their Working Communities Challenge to Welcoming Communities Challenge with the Boston Fed support. And so they were in the news, I think, a few years ago, but they are now at a point where their volunteer networks have burned out, and this community sponsored model that they are really rolling out across the nation in terms of how to best support new arrivals is very dependent on volunteer effort. And it's a little bit of a longer term, deeper volunteer effort than many volunteer populations are used to committing. So we're starting to, we'll be having the first volunteer summit specific to the refugee resettlement community here in the Upper Valley in July, just as a chance for all these folks to come together and learn about what they're looking at down the road from a group of people who are a little bit further ahead than them, so that maybe they can avoid some of the pitfalls and learn some of the lessons that have worked out. So a little bit removed in the immediate sense from the Food Network, but in my way of thinking, very, very relevant in terms of both labor and food ways. Many refugee populations bring a very different way of thinking about food to the table. And I think that the Resiliency Network will probably be part of our conversation as we go forward.
Great. Thank you for all of that really good sharing. And I encourage folks, if there are things that are happening in your community, events, volunteer opportunities, like the film screening you were talking about, if you send them to Cam and myself, or you can send directly to, you have the emails for everybody, you can send directly to the group, or you can send to Cam and I, and we will also send them out. So either way, but I think it's great to start sharing.
It'll be in your newsletter because I've already been talking to Becky.
Great. And the other thing is, if there are volunteering opportunities in the future with your hubs for different things, we are happy to put that in the Vital Communities e-news as well, just generally speaking. So Alice and Megan, I think you're up to give us a bit more of an in-depth feel for what's happening at your hub.
Okay, I will try not to talk too long because I know we're behind time. I do have a couple of show and tell things and some slides, and the slides are mostly to keep me focused. So bear with me for 1 second. So the Mount Escutney CHIP stands for Community Health Improvement Plan, and that's a hospital thing under the Affordable Care Act. But anyway, our food security work group is working on what we have most recently dubbed the Opportunity and Action Framework. We've really been trying to focus on the positive. We started out as a food insecurity work group, and we flipped that around to food security, and we were looking at gaps, and now we're looking at opportunities. This is a cross-sector work group. Our aim, let's see if I can get this. Our aim as a work group was to identify, this is the old language, identify gaps and barriers to food access by conducting a food resources inventory, and then using those results to develop the plan to increase access to nourishing and culturally appropriate food. And so where we are now is we've done all the research, and now we have a plan, and we're trying to clean it up for public sharing, and also to prioritize it, because it has a lot of ideas in it, and we want to make sure that we pick a few things to work on first. For those of you who don't know our service area towns, this is the list. It's basically 3 school supervisory unions: Hartford, Windsor Central, which is around Woodstock, and Windsor Southeast, which is around Windsor. Except for we left off the towns that are actually in a different county, because this originally started with the CHIP work groups around data that we could get. And so that's sort of why we picked these towns. But we always like to say it's a dotted line. So if there are folks from other towns that want to join in the work that we're doing, they are absolutely welcome to come in. And for instance, we do have a work group member who works at the Special Needs Support Center and also lives in Claremont. So we are looking at New Hampshire a little bit, whereas before we were just focused on Vermont. So basically, we did this comprehensive inventory of more than 200 food assets region-wide, and food assets were basically, we defined as any place people could get food. And we also looked at what benefit programs these different food assets participate in. We did analysis. Two Rivers did some ArcGIS mapping for us, and I'll show the map in a second. And then we vetted and validated the different action plan initiatives that came out of all this research with people that are impacted by food security. We did a very non-scientific convenience sampling survey through partners like Head Start and the schools and the social workers and folks like that. And then we also did a focus group. And then we met with Kaya Ganguly from the state of Vermont. And Megan, I always forget what Kaya's title is. Do you remember?
I think it's like Director of Trauma-Informed Health, something like that. I'll Google it really fast.
Anyway,
yeah, something like that.
she looked at our plan to help us, identify if there was anything that we could refocus on from an equity perspective. So
it's Director of Trauma Prevention and Resilience Development.
Great, thank you. So I'm stop sharing. Oh, so before I do my little show and tell thing, just the long-term plan here, our focus is on equitable food access as far as geography and demographics are currently determining access to food through most programs. And then we decided to hold off on the quality issue for phase 2 because right now there's so many disparities just on what's available to people based on where they live or what age group they fall into that we thought we wanted to look at that first. You know, because if you run in too many directions at once, sometimes you're not very effective. So we're trying to be focused in this work. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and then I'm going to try, if I'm lucky, I'm going to share the, oops, or I'm just going to lose the meeting because I clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry. My mouse is never my friend. You know, I know, you know, Cam is also part of our work group. So Cam and Megan have seen me like fumble my way through this many times, but I'm doing my best here. All right. So this is the inventory is in a program. It's a Smartsheet program for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And one of the cool things about this is that we can put all these filters on. So right now you just see this big long list of all these different things. But for instance, I can say I want to look at farm stands. And then I can see, okay, here's the farm stands that are in our towns. And then here are the programs they participate in. And I can see that Crossroad, we decided to include Crossroad, even though it's technically in Norwich, because you can get there on advanced transit from Hartford or even walk from Hartford. It's the only one that participates in the Vermont Farm to Family program and takes 3 squares. So this is us kind of identifying, here's some potential opportunities. Maybe some of these other folks, depending on their model, might be able to pick up some of these other programs. This is just an example of the type of analysis that we've been going through as we're developing our action plan. You know, another option is when you go and put on the filter for 3 squares, you can see that there's a bunch of places that take 3 squares, and a lot of them are things like Jiffy Marts and Cumberland Farms. So you can see a lot of them are actually convenience stores. I'm now going to, this was just to give you a flavor of the type of data that we've got and the different ways that we can look at it. And then I want to show you the map really quickly. And a big shout out to Pete Fellows who made this map for us. And now I'm trying to find my map because I have too many windows open. Hang on a second. I've got to get it to read. It uses up a lot of energy, so sometimes it kind of goes to sleep on me.
And it may take a second to load once she screen shares, just because it's so heavy.
Well, I'm just for I'm going to go and turn all the things off because it comes on with all the layers on, which is just kind of overwhelming usually. All right, I think I've got that. Oh, it's not loading my snap layer. Oh no. All right, well, I'm going to show it anyway. And maybe by the time I share it, it will have loaded. All right. So it's not doing it right now. If it was doing what we'd like it to do, it would be loading a layer that's color coded by the percentage of folks that are enrolled in 3 squares. And then we had Pete plot all of the stores, and the little brown circles are stores that don't take SNAP or WIC. And the sort of tan medium-sized circle takes 3 squares, otherwise known as, that's what they call SNAP in Vermont. And then the bigger green circles take SNAP and WIC. So one of the things you can see from this map, and I realize it's probably small on your screen, is there are only 3 stores that take WIC in this whole area. And they're kind of far away from some of the folks. Another thing you can see, so this store here is Watrova's in Reading, which is a store that takes 3 squares, only it just closed in the last couple of months. So, this was already a little bit of a place where it was hard for people to access food with their benefit cards, and now they've lost one of their options. And not only that, like there's not even a store close to them in most cases. We've used this for a lot of different things. We have layers on there for, the dots I just turned on. I'll turn off the stores. This shows you all the schools in the region by their level of free and reduced price lunch. So the bigger red circles are those schools that have a higher percentage of kids, and the little tiny green circles are ones that have very low percentages. And I'm sorry that some of the other layers aren't loading, because one of the things we discovered when we were doing this is there was not always a correlation. The correlation that you would expect wasn't always there. We had some fairly low poverty towns with some higher poverty schools if you look at the free and reduced price lunch data. So this mapping has been a really interesting exercise for us as a work group. And just in interest of time, I'm gonna stop doing my show and tell now. I just really wanted to show people the kinds of resources that we developed as part of our assessment process. And then I was just gonna look to Megan and Cam as well, if there's anything that you wanted to talk about as far as where we're going next, and just things you think that the Resilience Network might be interested in as far as the work that we're looking to do.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is we need people. We have listed a whole bunch of opportunities in our framework, and we're looking for people and organizations to get involved. So stay tuned for more information on that, really.
Yeah, and the other thing that I tend to think about is when we're looking through the action plan at like different opportunities to work on, there's different avenues that rely on different knowledge sets, and I think that this particular group spans a lot of those. So there's things like community gardens. There's also discussions of working with local businesses, like to increase their ability to accept SNAP and WIC and things like that. So I think that that's going to be something that's useful going forward, is just the fact that we have a lot of different work experience within this group that can tie into a lot of different places that are identified through what the food security work group has found.
Yeah, and I actually want to follow up on what Cam just said about the expertise in this group, because we started talking about food forests sort of late in the game for the action plan, and a lot of people are wanted to know more about what those are. I mean, there is one in Windsor. The Windsor Community Garden has one, but I reached out to Kat and asked her if she would be willing to come to one of our meetings and talk to us just a little bit about food forests to help give people an idea of what they are, what's involved in setting them up. So Kat's going to be coming to our June meeting. I just have to get back to her about what time on the agenda, but she helpfully agreed to come, which was great.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah.
Cool. So when I try to think about sort of what you've been doing, I imagine that there's a whole bunch of people that live in those towns that are in fact eating. Everybody's eating. And so they must be going somewhere to get their food, and there's probably some supermarkets or something like that where the majority of people would be getting their food. And I'm trying to understand how that interfaces with getting a broader understanding of the entire food network. So finding out where other opportunities for obtaining food are located. Is there an underlying assumption here that the sources of food that people are currently able to access are in some way either unequitable or inadequate? Is that what's driving this need to look more broadly than the existing pathways of food that must be happening in order for people to exist?
So for example, and I didn't show the food shelf layer on the map, but the Woodstock food shelf serves I think it's 5 or 6 other towns that don't have a food shelf. And so those folks are very far away from that food shelf. It's not, so if there's somebody who's, food insecure and they need to rely on a food shelf, it's not easy for them to get to that food shelf. All the food shelves around here are open very limited hours. Some of them are open, twice a month for 2 hours each time. There's one food shelf that's open 1 hour a week on Saturdays. The food shelves are not open very often. They're not open when people are at work, if they have a regular job. A lot of people, based on our surveys, about half of the people, once again, it was not a scientific survey, but about half of them are getting food from the Haven and then also another food shelf. So they're probably either making a special trip or maybe coming by the Haven on the way home from work. So one of the things we're looking at is the idea of setting up satellite food cupboards in at least some of these towns, either to cover the geography, geographically to make it easier for people to get at least something when they need something, or also to help folks who can't get to the food shelf when it's open. One of the ideas that came out of the focus group was to set up a satellite food cupboard at the fire station in Windsor, because it doesn't have the same trauma-inducing impact of going into the police station, and it's also another place that's manned 24/7. where it would be plausible to have a cupboard where people could pop in and get things. We've also looked at there's one at a church in White River Junction that's outside that basically has a camera on it, so there's a bunch of different models that we're looking at of ways to, specifically for the population that might be accessing or who would like to be able to access food shelves, of making that easier, reducing barriers. Right now, the potential satellite locations that we put on the map so far, most of them are driving routes that Meals on Wheels drivers use. So we've already thought through the idea of, like, if we had the food supplies, the Meals on Wheels drivers could transport the food to those satellite food cupboards or check on them to see if they needed more food. So it's we're trying to make it so that your ability to access food isn't so based on your geography. Yes, there are grocery stores. There's not a lot of them. There is one in Woodstock. There is one in Windsor. Most of those towns have a general store or no store, or they have sort of a boutique store that serves a very well-to-do tourist population, and it doesn't take 3 squares. So for them to be able to access a place where they can use their benefits card, they might have to drive 45 minutes or an hour because they're way off down a dirt road somewhere off of several secondary roads. So we're trying to, I think it was, I can't remember now whether it was Megan or Cam who mentioned that one of the things we are looking at is trying to get more stores to take 3 squares, and where stores offer the right product line, to get more stores to accept WIC, so that somebody who just needs to get stuff for their kids' lunch the next day doesn't have to drive, an hour and a half round trip because the store where they can afford to use their card is so far away. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you. May I ask a quick follow-up? And this may be bigger than we can handle today, but there's obviously an economic piece as well. And so a lot of these farms, I saw Deep Meadow Farm was there, for example, and their pricing is pretty good. I mean, they obviously it costs a lot of money to grow food, and so the pricing of the freshest food, the most nutritious food, may well be more expensive than the produce that one would get from Market Basket in Claremont, for example. And so it seems to me like that's ultimately you're going to hit a bit of a brick wall as regards to the price issue, and to what extent is the system going to allow for folks to access other sources of food. If the pricing is quite different, then someone with limited means is going to prioritize the place where they can get the most stuff for the least money. So I think this is probably way more than we can do today, but it's something I'd like to explore later.
So when I mentioned earlier, phase 2 was about quality. I think it was supposed to actually say choice and quality. That access to fresh food is definitely something we want to look at. We decided to start with just access to food, because in some cases, there are schools that don't have weekend backpack programs, so their children going hungry over the weekend and things like that. So we kind of decided that we wanted to focus there first. And then as we fill in some of those holes, then start looking at some of the other pieces that you're bringing up.
Great. I think if it's okay, in the interest of time, we might move on. And if there are particular questions that pop into people's minds, I think, Alice, if there were particular questions and it would be okay to email, if that would be something you'd be open to, that would be helpful. So we wanted to kind of come back because we haven't as a group had a chance to really come back to the asset mapping results and further reflection of, as you've hopefully all had a chance to dive into that and do some reading and see what's happening at each of the hubs, and wanted to hear if there were additional thoughts that had come out of looking at that. Monica was able to get back and fill out a lot more, which is great for Feeding the Valley Alliance. And I think it's just Four Town Coalition that hasn't had a chance to fill it out yet. But otherwise, we have a pretty good picture now of like what's happening at each of the hubs. And we can post that link, actually. Do that right now. . And so in addition to just kind of general open, if there were things that had come up for you in terms of themes that weren't captured on that other page behind the input from the hubs. In addition to that, I wanted to bring us back to this conversation of, we're really hoping to kind of move forward with the technical assistance and hubs and aligning that, and just trying to understand if there's things beyond this asset map to start matching folks together, what that might be, and wanted to put that out there for this group to ponder.
I can say that for our particular hub, we are such a new small organization that we haven't done any strategic planning or work planning or financial planning or anything like that, other than the very basic stuff, just because, like I said, we're very, very small. So any kind of technical assistance that we can get in that regard would be very welcome.
Yeah, just kind of something too that Erica and I have been talking about is doing some individual one-on-one reach out with hubs and getting a sense for where everyone's work and projects are at, and getting information like what you just shared, Monica, so that we can, help facilitate some connections. Just really quickly to gauge some interest, is that something that you would feel would be helpful? Just because we're trying to walk a line of not asking people to commit too much time to talking with us, as much as we love talking with you, but
yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
And in that similar vein, we would be reaching out also to technical service providers as well. We're just realizing, right now we have it set up where we're doing 2 1-hour meetings a month, primarily because there isn't a time where everyone can make it and come together. So we're spreading it across 2 shorter meetings, but that there's a lot that we can probably pull in from some more one-on-ones with y'all, and especially when folks aren't able to make it to a meeting, that kind of helps bring that perspective in. Leon.
Yeah, Erica, I have a question about that process, because from the perspective of a technical advisor, I'm sitting here and I go, ooh, I can help Monica, because I have some. And how do you want that to work? Are you going to be the matchmaker, so to speak, and saying, we have a need here, we have a technical assistance provider here? How do you want that process to happen?
So I think I would love some input from you all. For my immediate reaction, I would think that having what those needs are from each of the hubs, and we have that starting point of what they have in the asset maps, and then reaching out collectively to the technical service providers. There's only 6 of you right now, and just trying to understand, because I know some of your areas of expertise, but I think there's a lot that I also don't know, similar to when we went through this exercise with the hubs to kind of know what we don't know moment. And I think that in terms of also just, I'm sure that all of the technical service providers have time that they have to manage as well, and understanding like who has bandwidth when, and as well as the expertise that it might be. That is the way that I have thought about it, but I would love if the technical service providers had thoughts beyond that, or alternatives, because we're definitely open to alternative suggestions. Hi, Lionel.
Hi. I feel like somehow it would be great if we could come to a peak, or we're sort of bubbling and gathering and sharing and learning more about each other. And I feel like we need to reach some sort of an inversion where we come through that process, and then we have a unified understanding of what we are and where we're going. And I don't know how that's going to happen. And I sense that you guys, that you, Erica, and Cam are being very respectful of all of us, and that you're just sort of not trying to drive this too hard. But it's challenging. I when we were listening to Alice talking, and I didn't hear opportunities for me to be helpful to them as far as what could I do to assist them. And at some point, I think we're going to get to that where we will have a clear sense of what each of the group's needs are. But then the immediate question, once we learn that, is going to be how to prioritize. And then in order to understand how to prioritize, we would have to have a sense of what our goal is. And so I keep feeling like we can arrive at the goal eventually, but that it would be more efficient if there was some way that we could arrive at the goal sooner, and then get to work in the sense of, now that we know what we're aiming for, the technical service providers would have a sense of how they could apply themselves toward that goal, and B, we'd be able to have a sense of what success looks like. I don't know what success looks like right now. It seems like every group is in a different place, and that there are successes like Tray It Forward, a lot of pride around Tray It Forward. I don't know what makes Tray It Forward successful versus not successful, or what would make it even more successful. And I don't know how to get to that point where we're sort of talking at a more strategic level. And I wonder if anyone shares these thoughts at all.
I have some thoughts as well, but I'm going to make sure that Kat had her hand up, and Cam, and then anyone else who wants to throw their hand up. And Kat, go
Thanks.
for it.
Okay, thanks. And sorry, I didn't change. I just noticed my name is wrong on here. Yeah, thanks for that, Lionel. I have been thinking about that a bit too, and it's hard to move at the pace of relationships and also sort of bow to the feeling of haste and urgency that we all feel. And I wonder if it isn't time to maybe think about committees to start taking some pieces of the greater hub work forward and then bringing it back to the whole group. We're a large group, and I think we have, it's clear that we have an incredible amount of expertise just in the people that show up here, plus all of the people behind us in our respective hubs. And that might also be a way to include, one of the things I've been saying, to include more people in these discussions. Perhaps if we had subcommittees working on things like strategy or overarching goals or something like that, that we could then come back to this group and propose things together. So I hope that made sense. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what you just shared, Kat. And Lionel, I was thinking as you were talking, this has been an interesting process for Erica and I to work as as a backbone for this network, just because it has required holding some of that uncertainty. And I think something that can cause some of that uncertainty, but I'm also really excited about is the fact that we have such a wide breadth of people working on different projects, because I think, when we're talking about what our overall goal is, I think, to go back to an earlier conversation, we're talking about like food systems resilience and what does that actually mean? And for the different people in this group, that means different things because of what they're working on. But I think to my idea what success is being able to facilitate the connection between people that are doing different work under the same umbrella and finding ways that they can connect in. And some it's going to not be as good a fit, like what you were talking about with hearing Alice's presentation and not necessarily knowing where to plug into that. So I guess I just want to say thank you for naming the fact that it feels kind of undefined right now. I think we're definitely feeling that as well. And also, I think it might continue to feel a little bit like that, just especially to what Kat, you mentioned with you know, bringing not only the people that we have in this room into this work, but the people we're working with on these projects that are not in these meetings, because they also have some incredibly valuable knowledge and skills and insights to bring. You know, that's just something too that we're trying to figure out the best way to help support and facilitate. And especially too, something that, you know, we didn't really get a chance to talk to as much here today, but that we've seen through some of the mapping and we've talked about before, is that there are really great initiatives and projects that are happening in this region that are not represented here. And so, you know, how do we tie into and support or be involved with that work as well? Because overall, in my estimation or my sight, you know, like a thriving, resilient food system relies on understanding what's going on and the relationship that we all have with these projects to one another and how they fit together. Yeah, Leon?
Yeah, I'm kind of pulling a number of things together. When I think of what we are doing, when we talk about the notion of a resilient community or community resilience, you know, I go back to the kind of academic or intellectual definition of what is community resilience. And it is the capacity of a system to respond to disturbance, and also the capacity of the system to be able to change and adapt. And so just in that, there are a whole bunch of things that we need to do. And we're actually doing that at the moment. We are, as you say, Cam, we're getting a better understanding of what is the system, you know, who are the partners involved, what are the aspects involved. So we're actually busy getting a sense of the system. And then the other thing, and actually I think it came back to a question that, or comment that Lionel made right in the beginning, is what is the disturbance, right? So the disturbance will be climate change, the disturbance will be fossil fuel. What is the disturbance? The disturbance is food insecurity. And so I think what we need to do is to, maybe Kat has a good idea, to start glomming some smaller groups together and say, let's this group focus on what are the disturbances in this community that we need to anticipate and be prepared for. What is our system and what are the capacities that we need to make it work?
I'm going to jump in because I realize it's 4 o'clock and I know that some of you may have to jump off. And I'm sorry that we only have an hour this is good discussion to be having. And I also think that we need to start having a little bit more discussion on email to kind of move some ideas forward in between some of these meetings. So quickly, very quickly, I'm going to say a couple of things. We had the RFP go out for a racial equity training, and we only had one official response came back. So we are reassessing, because we had several conversations with others that were interested, but gave us an indication that that the amount that was available for it and the time didn't seem appropriate. And so we are doing a bit of work on our end to search for some additional funding and figure out that. So we will report back more soon, but just wanted to give you that update. And in terms of the next meeting, so for June, we'll send out an update, some updated invitations, but we'll do again like a Tuesday morning and a Thursday afternoon, with hopes that people will be able to attend at least one, if not both. And in the meantime, we'll do please send us information in terms of things you want us to share out to the network, and we're going to start to try to incorporate that in a bit more. And if you have specific desires for the next agenda, I wanted to leave some time for that, but we can please also email. And we will start reaching out one-on-one, which I think will help facilitate a lot of this going forward. But thank you all for being here today, and so much good conversation.